This is Fritz Frivolous with continuous live coverage of the corner of Curious Lane and Just Because Boulevard, the epicenter of the alien invasion. And this just in, King Kong is fighting the Mobile Suit Gundam. And of course, all of this is happening amidst World War IV, making it pure pandemonium. If only Captain Planet were still alive to save us all. Dude, could you imagine? The Roman Empire, lasting for over 1,000 years and spanning over 1.9 million square miles. Its estimated inhabitants was between 50 to 90 million people, which was about 20% of the world's population at that time. The Roman Empire was one of the largest empires in history. However, this isn't a history lesson. I'm not here to tell you the names of all the Caesars and emperors and have you memorize dates and locations. The exact time for the fall of the Roman Empire is still debated to this day. But what if the Roman Empire never fell? What if the Roman Empire was able to continue to grow and become stronger and larger? How would this affect the world we know today? Let us gain an audience with our two co-emperors, Will and Tom, as they try to brace themselves before the fall. Welcome back, everybody. This is Tom Case.
This is Will Stark.
Will, I have a question for you that I know you're going to like.
Okay, let's see. Watch, I'm like, fuck.
I know.
Flip a table.
I hate this
I
question.
quit this podcast.
Thomas, you are the devil. No, I know you will like this because you talk about it a lot, and I do know it's one of your favorite subjects. Mm-hmm. And that question is, what if the Roman Empire never fell? Now, let us establish parameters here.
Yes, please. Actually, yeah, give me the parameters because that can mean a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly. And just, I know that you know a lot about this subject. I do not know a lot about this subject. So, I would appreciate you filling in anything. Or if you hear me say something that you're like, oh, you know what, I don't think that's necessarily true, just go ahead and, let us know.
That being said, I'm not very brushed up on this subject right now. But I'm sure I'll recall things that'll be pertinent to the conversation. Yeah. But yeah, go ahead and give me your parameters.
You do like the subject, correct?
Oh, yeah. I love Roman history. I would say this really depends on what you mean by that, because the Roman Empire, I'm not even including the Republic in this conversation, has like quite a few different phases. And like Roman Empire during the 300s is very different from the Roman Empire in like, say, the 100s or the 200s. To the point where like it almost completely crashed and burned. And if it wasn't for two emperors, Aurelian and then Diocletian, I can't remember what ethnicity they were too, because they were very specific from a very specific part of the empire. But if they hadn't come in and then completely changed the system, Roman Empire would have fallen like 200 or 300 years earlier than it did. But because of the changes that happened, that's an era of the Roman Empire, the Western Empire, that probably gets talked about the least. And it's the last bit of Roman Empire that we had before it did fall.
See, that's funny I knew nothing of that, obviously, but I did find it interesting how you said that, there were two emperors and you were like, their race or their ethnicity, like this specific part that they came from this empire shows just how big the empire probably was. Because
it's gigantic, yeah.
Because not only what I didn't think about that, where it might be so gigantic, it would encompass people of different races, right? But I also thought that they would not allow, you know what I mean? Like someone from another, like, even though they're part of that Roman Empire, they would, I thought they were going to,
if I remember,
you have to have this lineage or something like that.
If I remember correctly, the emperors stopped being Italian after the Flavian dynasty, which would have been the dynasty
Flavian dynasty?
The Flavian, which would have been the dynasty right after the Julio Claudian dynasty, which is like the first one.
Okay.
For instance, I believe the era of the good emperors, which is Trajan the Hadrian to Antoninus to Marcus Aurelius, I think they were all Spaniards.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure all four of them were Spaniards, but at least two or three of them were. So, like, yeah. And then after that, it's a mess. Yeah. But, yeah, it's crazy. But.
See, everyone, I told you Will's smart. Like, I knew nothing of that.
I know some things. Let me see your parameters.
Okay, yeah. Here's the parameters. So, Okay, so here's the parameters of if the Roman Empire never fell. What I mean by that is the Roman Empire exists just like it did in our history, except during the era of, I guess, what people would consider its fall. Because when I was trying to do some research on it, a lot of them use the word like it was dissolved, or there was like a, you know what I mean? Like there wasn't a clear,
there is no clear cut line. Like there's a lot of arguments over when the Western Empire fell. But honestly, by the time you could say it fell, it was so completely different
that you couldn't call it that. That's what
fallen completely apart.
Yeah. So this is why I wrote this parameter like this.
The Eastern Empire super endured and was very much still a Roman Empire and referred to themselves as such. And it lasted another 1,000 years, even though it was much more, Greco-based because of the area that it existed in. So, like, some people would argue the Roman Empire didn't fall until the Turks burst down, what was Istanbul's walls, before it was
Constantinople?
Yeah, when the...
Yes, I had to think of the song in my head.
When the cannons bursted down Constantinople's walls by the Turks, which I think happened in the late 1700s, early 1800s. So some would say that's when the Roman Empire fell. I disagree, but anyways, I digress. Go ahead.
I'm going to agree with you, Will, on that point. No. So this is the reason why I wrote the parameters like this, is because I said, so the Roman Empire exists just like it did in our history, except the empire never falls, as if the reasons behind the fall are rectified. So if you were to place the blame, and I can see this probably going across the board. I just wrote down examples of, like, if some people were to say it was the last 4 or 5 Caesars or whatever emperors that caused the downfall, or it was a war that caused it, or it was their falling economy that causes whatever those points are. Let's just say those got rectified, and that's why it didn't fall. And then the objective I just want to see is how do you think it would make the world different today? Like, how would it change how we live our lives today?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So to answer this question from my own perspective, there is a specific emperor that kind of makes this complicated. His name's Diocletian. Diocletian did a lot of things and changed a lot of policies, which directly, in my opinion, are responsible and result in what ends up being the Dark Ages later. Like, without Diocletian, I don't think we get a feudal medieval society with serfs and peasants working the land. Before Diocletian, that wasn't how things were. And Diocletian basically, he made changes to the Roman economy, which saved Rome at the time in a very big bad way. But set us directly on the path towards feudalism. That being said, if we want to rewind the clock to a point where I'm confident in saying, like, this is where Rome started to quote unquote fall. Yeah. Then for me, my personal opinion, again, so many people are going to have so many opinions about this, but for me, it has to be when Marcus Aurelius allows his son Commodus to inherit the throne. Okay. Because Marcus Aurelius he's my favorite Roman emperor. He was a philosopher king, a genius, a heartfelt man. But you're saying his son was not. His son fell far from the tree. Absolute disaster. Wow. And a lot of people get mad at Marcus Aurelius for allowing his son to inherit, and they try and point out the fact that that era of the good Roman emperors, starting with Trajan, is each of those individuals didn't pass on their throne to their sons. They passed on their throne to a person that they chose. Oh, okay. But the reason is because none of them had kids. Or at least none of them had sons. But if they did, you think they would have done that? Yeah, because that was standard. It just so happens that Marcus Aurelius was the first one and the last one to have a son. So it was like a Game of Thrones problem where everyone, they were tired of, like, you can't just use very much family. Like Joffrey. Oh, very much like really? Joffrey, which is crazy. Like, and again, I used to think Marcus Aurelius was so great at being an emperor and a listener, and I mean, he's not perfect. He did a lot of not great things too. I'm not saying that, but there's so much about that man that inspires me as a human being to become a better person myself, that I couldn't help but wonder, like, how did his son end up the way he did? And he must not have been there as a father. But from all I've read about the man, he did try everything he could to have Commodus follow in his his footsteps and see the world in his like ethical, stoic philosophy kind of way. And Commodus was just the polar opposite of him.
Wow.
Anyways, long story short, Commodus is a disaster. He almost ruins the whole empire in 12 years to the point where his own people kill him, overthrow him. And I don't even remember who comes in after Commodus, but it doesn't matter because at that point, we go into this big descent of Roman emperors like coming up and being killed and coming up and being killed and just descent and chaos everywhere.
So you can't even say each one was worse than the next because they didn't even get a chance to. It was all over the place,
and quite frankly, like I can't even remember. There were so many emperors there. But,
so this does bring two questions to mind, and I'm probably going to ask you a lot of questions because I'm not I don't research a lot of stuff about the Roman Empire. It's not something that, like an era of history that I usually look into. And I don't know of our listeners if they are into this or not.
I'm sure there might be someone who's like, he's wrong this way, and I totally could be. Yeah. This is just from what I've read and what I understand. Yeah. These are my opinions that I've formed so far.
Well, what I'm hoping for is that there's a lot of other listeners who are like me, who are like, Caesar who and Emperor what? And when was this?
If you have a question, I'll try to give you like a brief little biography.
Yeah. Well, so the first question, actually, the first thing I wanted to say is not a question. The first thing was, man, if someone could explain to me the Roman Empire with Game of Thrones references, I would probably learn all about the Roman Empire.
Yeah, I think it could be done. I'd have to sit and think about it myself, but I'm sure it could be done.
Like
someone would do it much more cleverly.
You comparing him to King Joffrey, made me go like, oh, I get exactly what you mean. Like,
I say Commodus was a lot like Joffrey with one exception. Commodus was not a coward, and he was a badass gladiator. Like
Joffrey was a coward.
The dude could throw down. Yeah. Have you ever seen the movie Gladiator, which is super not historically correct?
Oh, I know, but I have seen it.
That's Marcus Aurelius, and the guy who takes over is Commodus, and Maximus Decimus Meridius kills him in combat and all that. That doesn't happen in real life, but one of the things in that movie is he's a fan of the gladiators, and you see Commodus train with soldiers. Yeah. And Commodus really did do that in real life. And he was apparently, from what everyone wrote about him, a pretty damn good fighter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is super not like his dad, who was a philosopher.
When we get to the Fritz facts, I have an interesting fact I found about gladiators.
Okay. I'd like to hear it. But another thing, though, is like, despite the era of the good emperors being that, or the great emperors, I think it's actually called, there was a lot of turmoil in that period, and it was because these dudes were so good at what they were doing, like they kept the empire strong and together. But Marcus Aurelius had to deal with probably the worst era when it came to famine and plague. He died of the, I forgot what the name of the plague was. It might have been the Antonitis plague. They might have called it that, actually. Don't remember why. Antonitis was the emperor before Aurelius.
Maybe it started during his reign.
That might have been it. I don't remember. But either way, that's why I think Marcus Aurelius is the second greatest emperor. Because I think he could have been greater than Augustus, but he was kind of put in a bad time. But that's not your question. This is the cutoff for me where things start to descend.
And where is this cutoff in of like are we like what 5 emperors back now? Are we like before this end?
Oh, before the end period?
Yeah, like where is this cutoff? If you could like describe it.
I think Marcus Aurelius's rule, I want to say, was in the 200 BCs. I think the Western Empire dies its last gasp, I think, in like 495 or something.
Oh, okay. So he's quite far.
Yeah, but there was like a 100-year gap between Commodus and I think they're the Illyrian kings or the Illyrian emperors, which is Aurelian and Diocletian and I forget who comes after Diocletian. There's like this 100-year gap of constant war and turmoil where the empire almost completely collapses.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Dang. And it's barely saved by these, I want to say Illyrian dudes, but that might not be the right ethnicity.
So, okay. So let's say that point in the Roman Empire history.
We cut off of Marcus Aurelius?
Yeah. And the mistakes made from his son thereof don't happen.
So in my world where Rome doesn't fall, Marcus Aurelius decides his son needs to be murdered, which he would never do because he was super ethical. But maybe
that's so bad.
But Commodus is a fucking insane person. He needs to die. So, or we'll just say Commodus gets the plague and dies. And now Marcus Aurelius has to do what the 4 men before him had to do, and that's find an appropriate heir who can do the job as best as possible. And I think if he had done that, he was such a wise and intelligent and He took his responsibility, even though he hated his responsibilities. Like he wrote a lot about this. Like it was such a burden on him to be the emperor. He took it so seriously that he dutifully did everything he possibly could to the best of his ability. He would have done that too. And I bet you he probably would have found someone fantastic for the job.
Man, you know what? I didn't even think about that. Like being an emperor. I wonder if it even is comparable. Like, let's say being the president of the United States, the pressure and the
I think it's pretty comparable. If anything, it's probably more stressful than being the president.
Yeah, because I think you have more chance of dying. Like people assassinating.
Yeah, there's that. But I just meant like when it comes to the blame, you know what I mean? Like even the strongest president can only take so much of the blame because we have,
the House,
the Senate, and all that other stuff. But like when it came to the empire, like it all goes to the top.
Yeah, that is true.
But so let's say that happens, and somehow the era of good emperors gets expanded. Obviously, I can't predict anything, but you can't really predict what's going to happen because now we've changed things so drastically.
Yeah, that is
it could
true.
go in a billion different directions. Yeah. But what I can tell you, certain things probably wouldn't have happened. So, we don't get Diocletian. So we don't get a feudal system installed. We probably never get to that point where the quality of the Roman coin like dissolves so poorly that Diocletian had to do the big economic reforms that he did. Oh, okay. So none of that probably ever happens. And we probably don't get the same level of Christian persecution that we got during the transition from Diocletian to, I can't remember who picks it up after him. And then we probably don't get the huge resurgence of like a Christian movement and Constantine making Christianity the religion of the empire, which leads to, we probably don't get the Catholic Church. So we're talking about an entire world history line where medieval feudalism doesn't happen. Yeah. The Catholic Church doesn't happen. And as a result, probably a lot of the other, like Judaism still exists, but I wouldn't be surprised if Islam doesn't happen because Christianity wasn't there either. Because it branched off from there.
I didn't even thought about that.
And if there's if it doesn't collapse, then we don't get the Dark Ages in which like we lost a massive amount of knowledge and technology. Like just a huge amount. Can you imagine like growing up and I don't know, like Dark Ages Spain or Italy, and you see these grand structures that we can't make anymore, but we did at some point. Like that must be mind blowing.
Yeah, that would have been weird.
So we don't lose that technology. There's no need for a renaissance later. The Industrial Revolution probably happened sooner. That being said, there was no way that amount of landmass with that many cultures, with technology at the level it was going to stay together.
Oh, really? So
eventually it was going to break apart. Like
so even if technically the Roman Empire like didn't fall the way it did, you still think at some point there's no way it can ever stay together up to our present day.
I mean, I won't say no way. I just think it's highly unlikely. The Byzantine Empire, which was basically the Roman Empire, it fell eventually too.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
It's just times change. Organizations become corrupt, they lose power, things wax and wane, and like when you have that many cultures and diversities that want different things, that need different things, and the technology level is at such a point where when it was all one empire, like Spain and Greece are so far from each other. They have super different needs, super different resources, completely different cultures, and so like what the fuck does Greece care about what's going on in Spain at this time period? You know what I mean? If Spain gets invaded by, I don't know, the Germanic tribes or something, you know what I mean? Like Rome kept it together by some sort of miracle, but I just don't see it lasting. I don't see it lasting past, I don't know, the 12th century.
Oh, really?
If by some miracle it even got there. But I mean, I think,
let's say if it did, what, cause like in my imaginations, it's just based off the information that you gave me. I feel like, let's say it did last till the present day. You and I are right now living in the Roman Empire, right? The only one thing I can really foresee that I think would be better than it is today is like infrastructure. I feel like infrastructure as in like, travel, roads, not just roads, but like even travel in like, I kind of feel like.
Well, I mean, the infrastructure that they laid down was still built upon later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, I feel like
those roads were still there. Many of them are still there.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I'm saying, though. I feel like they would have had the time because when certain things are lost, then other people build new things and different things. I kind of feel like it would have been so from the same type of era and everything. It would have been just done, but in like a better way, like all the way through. I kind of feel like that's the only thing I could see in this day that would be like, oh wow, look at this.
It would be interesting to see like what would happen to many of the very unique cultures if they were kept within the same nation for that long amount of time.
Yeah.
Like we wouldn't have France the way we have France today. Because France wasn't even a thing until way after the Roman Empire collapsed. Germany wasn't even a fucking full country until I want to say the 1700s was when Germany became a thing.
Yeah. That brings up something interesting too. What do you think if it could have lasted up until like our modern day times? Do you think certain tragedies, world tragedies that happened would still have happened? Like, let's say, Hitler trying to...
I mean, probably not. Like, we don't get World War I if the entire state of the Mediterranean Europe is one nation. Like, we might have civil wars, but it probably wouldn't turn into any type of these world wars.
Yeah.
Also, like, if it lasted that long and, like, we wouldn't have got a British Empire. There would have been Napoleonic Wars. Who knows what if the Roman Empire had lasted long enough to start sending expeditions over to the New World, like who knows how that would have gone.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of things would happen the same, especially with the transference of diseases from Europe to the Americas, and causing what I think some people call the Great Death. Like it caused so much death, the amount of diseases the Native Americans got from the Europeans. Yeah. Would we still be, we'd probably be speaking some like weird version of like modern Latin.
Oh, that's true.
Which some would argue we already are, but yeah. So, I mean, this butterfly effect just gets so big, it just becomes utterly unpredictable.
Welcome back. This is Timaeus and Willicus for. That's hilarious. So let's go to some of the first facts I have. The thing you mentioned about the gladiators. So, gladiator sweat was sold at the Colosseum after a ruthless battle. There was a long curved piece of metal called a strigil, I think, and it squeegeed sweat off of the gladiator's body. They bottled it and then sold it to a fan in the audience. And usually it was used as like an aphrodisiac, like you put it, like a guy would put it on thinking that this scent of,
it's fucking disgusting.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I know it's disgusting, but like I guess they would think this sweat of this powerful gladiator man would attract a woman, right? But if it wasn't used for that, they did try to use it for medicinal purposes.
Of course they did.
That they thought helped certain ailments like epilepsy.
Why gladiator sweat?
I don't know. I think it's just because they thought, the gladiator, he was like a pinnacle. They were like the rock stars, you know what I mean? Of like this time.
Not really. Gladiators were like the lowest of the low. Like,
but they were famous. Like
if you were a gladiator or a musician or a poet or any of that stuff, the Roman culture looked down on you very harshly. You were barely above a beggar or a homeless person.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I heard that if you were doing well as a gladiator, like because a lot of people saw you, like you were kind
in the
of like
same way. If a porn star is really successful, they are adored by millions, but also like they probably don't go around saying like, hey, I'm a porn star to everyone they meet in life because there's a lot of baggage with that. You think I'm joking. I'm not joking.
Yeah, that's true. I can see that. Like, but I mean, but that, I think that could answer why they, what I would want to know is why they would thought it would help with certain ailments like epilepsy.
Because people are stupid. That's why.
Epilepsy?
Because they lived in the 200 ADs, man. Like, there was no good medicine.
Okay, I'm going to write you a prescription for 2 milligrams of gladiator sweat. Make sure to apply it all over your body. Okay. Number 2. Emperor Caligula wanted his horse, and I don't know if I'm saying this right, Incitatus? Incitatus?
I think Caligula named his horse after a particular senator that he despised.
Yeah, okay, that would make sense. Because he said he wanted his horse as a counsel. They said that, though, they don't know if how much of a rumor this is, only because this was written about him almost a full decade after his death. And there's debate as if he actually went through with this. However, it was written that he wanted this to happen because he felt an animal could do a better job than the Senate. Yeah. So that would make sense that him naming this horse after...
Oh, yeah. He almost definitely did that. He did a lot of crazy stuff. He was only emperor for 4 years, but he was such a disaster. He was assassinated very quickly.
Oh, really? Yeah. And the next one actually goes into saying Emperor Caligula may have been the strangest emperor, doing all the weird stuff, right?
Yeah.
However, they say... Well, at least where I got this from, says Nero may have been the worst. He allegedly murdered his wife, stepbrother, and own mother. But they did say his first 5 years were extremely successful, and he was considered a generous and benevolent emperor until economic instability rose and riots broke out. Then his popularity took a nosedive when he decided to spend time building expensive infrastructure instead of dealing with all the other problems sweeping over the citizens of the Roman Empire.
I don't know if my memory's failing me here, but from what I remember about Nero was that his mother was a horrible, horrible human being. And I think he was the one who was really preoccupied with being an actor and a musician. And it was just the greatest shame.
Oh,
and,
really?
He wasn't a good emperor, but he was nowhere near as bad as Caligula.
Oh,
Caligula was crazy. And I think Caligula had a thing too where at first, his first 6 months, he was really about it and seemed like he was going to be good. And then he suffered a sickness of some sort. He almost died. He had a deep fever and the doctors didn't think he was going to recover, but he did. But when he did, they said his whole personality was completely different and he went fucking insane.
They should have given him more gladiator sweat.
Apparently.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they didn't give him enough.
But Nero, I think, was quite bad. I don't remember specifics, but I do remember feeling he wasn't as bad as they thought, but he was quite terrible.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, number 4, Romans had built sewers to keep waste out of their cities. However, they were all public bathrooms. They were public places with benches that had open portholes where you would sit and do your business, right? Which I know it does sound gross, where you're they wouldn't have anything separating you. You could see everyone. Yeah. They said neighbors would usually have conversations while they're, taking their dump or pee or whatever. But this is the grossest part.
Okay.
They all shared, there was these sticks that had sponges attached to the end of them. And you can imagine what they used for, right? In case you can't imagine that, to wipe their ass, right?
Yeah.
And they shared these. They didn't sanitize the sponges. They had the sponges in a pot or a pottery thing, a designated area. And when you were done, you would go and use that. Actually, it didn't even say everyone used one. It said if you felt like you needed to clean yourself, you would go grab it and use it and then put it back after you're done.
It's interesting. It makes you wonder about how much about our tendency to stay away from things that we deem gross is natural in us, and how much is it learned behavior?
That's true too.
It's thinking about antibacterial soap or soap in general, about cleaning one's hands, and how I can't remember the name of the doctor. They used to laugh him out of the hospital because they laughed him out of a job because he kept saying that it was the doctors not cleaning their hands that was spreading infection.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was just so insulting to tell a doctor that he was dirty. When they would appear clean, but they weren't. Yeah. They were not clean because they weren't cleaning their hands. And now, we view if you don't clean your hands after the bathroom, that's disgusting.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just such a part of our culture, and obviously that is a learned behavior. But look what the Romans apparently were doing. How was that not naturally? It's just because that's the world. It was normal to them, right?
Also,
that is the first I've heard of it, so I don't know how true it is.
Yeah, but also too the very public space too. You know what I mean? Because nowadays everyone, it's all privacy.
Yeah, there's the modesty.
Now it's not. Now it is, but back then it was not. You know what I mean? Back then it was more everyone does this. I know you take poops. You know what I mean? I know you pee.
Everybody poops.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? But
that makes me. I wonder how much the modesty thing is a result of the Christian takeover of Europe.
What I
think.
What I mean?
Yeah. I don't know, but that could be distinctly possible. So
may have been one powerful person who maybe didn't have big enough penis as the next person, didn't want anyone to know, so they're you are blasphemy if you use this bathroom in front of everyone else.
Well, it's said that in the ancient world, large penises were said to be distasteful and barbaric.
Oh.
So I don't know how true that is, but that is what I've read, that's what was said.
Yeah. I think a lot of things like that change over time though too, because I know back in the day too, nowadays a lot of what's considered attractive for a woman is like someone who's like fit and slim or whatever. But like back in the day, they wanted someone that had more rounded bodies, like larger women, because like to them that was more of a sign of fertility. You know what I mean?
think it was more of a sign of you got money.
Or because you're
starving
well-fed
to fucking
too,
death in the street.
I didn't write this one down, but I remember this. They were also talking about people in the Roman Empire who brought out the trend of wearing purple, like the wealthy. And they were saying like how expensive purple could be because they were getting it from this, I think it was a mollusk or something. Yep. And it took like it was 1,000 mollusks to get like 1 ounce of this purple dye. Exactly, however, it would last a while. The dye was like really strong. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it said like it at one point it was almost worth its weight in gold if you can get this purple dye.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's why only like royalty and like the wealthy were able to even.
I'm pretty sure no one was allowed to wear purple except for the emperor. It was
because
royal
it's in short
color.
supply too. Yeah, but if it wasn't, you probably. I mean, I don't think a commoner could afford that.
Oh, I mean, that's how it ended up getting associated with royalty. It was just so expensive that only the super wealthy could afford it, and then it turns into like only the emperor wears this as a symbol of. The emperor being the first citizen, the one above us all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the last Fritz fact I have, I actually kind of, I like this one because at least they were kind of going in the right direction. They had way more, even nowadays too, with women being treated equal as men, I still think there's some issues that need to get fixed so that everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
But Roman women did have more rights and freedoms and statuses than other women living in the ancient world at their time. Yep. Like Roman women could own and sell property. They were also allowed to come and go as they please with no chaperone. Mm-hmm. And they could actually be called, they could become like official citizens. Mm-hmm. Unlike, let's say, Grecian women who were seen as like second-class non-citizens.
Oh yeah, the Greeks do not like women. Or not the Greeks, but like ancient Greece was not kind of women, yeah.
Like, it's just,
super
when I heard that, I at least was like, you know what, that was kind of cool that they at least, I mean, I'm not trying to like praise them that much because they did still treat women, less than men. In
relative to their times, there's something to be said about that. That probably has to do with the roots the Romans had when it came to democracy, which then became a republic, and the idea of like Roman exceptionalism. And so like, there was a certain pride in your Roman women because they were Roman. And
exactly.
That, of course, kind of died off as the Roman Empire developed. And then, of course, we get the Dark Ages, feudalism, plus the rise of Christianity, and then there goes all women's rights.
Yeah.
But, if the empire endures, though, I don't know if most of the modern world ever becomes democratic at all. Because... Yeah. It's because feudalism was so bad, and then we had the Renaissance, and then eventually the Age of Enlightenment in philosophy, where people start re-emerging with these ideas of republicanism and democracy and stuff, and then start overthrowing the monarchies. I don't know if that ever happens if the empire stays strong. Like, how could it occur? Because by the time we get to Marcus Aurelius, even way before that, the Senate is completely powerless and meaningless, and it's just, and it's not even a democracy. It's just rich people. It's just the aristocracy.
Yeah. So basically, you're thinking it would just stall the inevitable of its fall, the Roman Empire.
I don't know that. I'm just saying, I don't know if the empire would ever be able to last beyond into the modern age. But if it did, I think democracy doesn't develop the way it did in the Western world. It couldn't have.
Because that's what that's how they were running it out.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but dude, could you imagine?
Breaking news, a new study suggests leaving an iTunes review is very important for newly created podcasts. So to nurture your new favorite podcast, make sure to leave an iTunes review. This has been Fritz Frivolous, reminding you to like, comment, and subscribe. Will and Tom, back to you.
In a nearby alleyway, a young feral feline rummages through the trash in search for its next meal. A human who happens to be walking by hears the cat's cries of hunger and decides to investigate. The cat, now alerted to the human's presence, finds itself feeling threatened and begins to become vocal with stern meowing and hissing.
You want to go home with me?
The human, not understanding the warnings that are being given, reaches in to pick up the cat. The cat strikes fast and furiously, scratching the human, and makes for a hasty escape. Perhaps if the human could better communicate with the cat, this painful and humiliating interaction could have been avoided.
And we're back.
Indeed.
So, Will, I wanted to ask you this question, but I do also want to give credit to someone who had emailed us, and he had the same question. I already had this in my list of questions to ask you. Yeah, okay. But I told him great minds think alike because he also thought of it too. And that question is,
well, wait, who was the person?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
No problem.
I wanted to say thank you to Caleb.
Thank you, Caleb.
Caleb wrote into us, and he had a question that he wanted to present, and I thought it was really good because it was already one that I had on my list, and I really think that this is going to be a fun one.
All right, what do we got, man?
What if you could communicate with animals?
Oh, that's interesting.
So,
give me the parameters. Yeah.
The parameters on this one is only you can communicate with animals. I'm not saying like, what if you, as in like everyone could communicate with animals?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Only you can communicate with animals.
Absolutely.
You and the animals both can communicate on a human intelligent level.
Wow.
So it's
full on telepathy.
Yes, exactly. Wow. And others around you will not be able to notice this as it will be like communicating telepathically.
Okay. What about where does intelligence come into play then?
So it's not going to be because obviously some animals, most animals compared to a human won't be as intelligent.
Yes,
that's what I mean. But the reason I want to bring this because I want all animals to be at an equal level so that you can talk to them. It's not going to be where they're like food or whatever. Okay. They're what I mean. Like they can speak to you using English words that you understand. It's not going to be something where you're
my
like...
point is, like, if I'm talking to a silkworm, what the fuck can a silkworm ever say to me?
So, let me finish off the whole thing. Sorry. So,
I'm not trying to pick on silkworms. I think they're cool. It's just...
What do you got against silkworms? It'll be like you're communicating telepathically. The want and needs of the animals may not change. However, you may be able to persuade them of things. It all depends on the animal.
Okay.
So, I'm not necessarily saying that all animals are going to be highly intelligent, but when they speak to you about whatever it is they may be looking for, wanting, or whatever, they're going to talk to you in an English human voice.
This bugs me. Like, okay, so if I see a snail, I'm like, hey, buddy, what you up to? He's looking at me like, oh, looking for food.
Yeah, if that
makes
what he's
no
doing.
sense. I'm sorry, the snail is barely got one more intelligence than a rock.
So then, okay, but then this is the reason why I put that in the parameters. So then how would he communicate with you? Like, what would he say?
I mean, I think, personally, I think the way this would have to work in this magic world where I could talk to animals is, think about like children. And babies, like once you get to a level of intelligence where they can no longer speak, all you get is emotions and emoting, and you could maybe see by body language. Like, so I imagine this maybe with this telepathic link, I might be able to get like empathic waves, but not actual coherent thoughts.
Okay,
like how am I going to get a thought out of a creature that can't actually think?
Well, okay.
Maybe here's the thing, like, a lot of animals don't actually have, like, what you would call conscious thoughts.
So, let's say those animals, that's how that would work.
Okay.
But, because I'm saying with other animals, you can already kind of do that. That we as humans already do that, with a lot of animals.
To a certain degree. We overly anthropomorphize animals all the time and project onto them.
Yeah. But you could usually know when another type of, let's say, more intelligent animal.
Yeah.
You would know kind of through body language or through what you kind of feel that this animal's like.
Or what
they're scared or angry or they're whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's why I'm saying, like, I would want to at least have it to where they can explain to you in a way you understand.
Right,
okay?
Right.
And the objective is I just want to know how you think this would change your life. Would you change your diet?
Would I change my diet?
Yeah. Or would you try to become an ambassador of animals to humans?
Well, see, this depends. So essentially what you're trying to do is make it so like all animals are capable of this level of consciousness that most aren't. And thus, like, if they are, then they're very much capable of what you would call, like, long-term suffering. Or, like, they are traumatized by their experiences, which isn't the same as, like, experiencing pain. Like, a lot of animals experience pain. They just don't carry the thoughts of that pain with them later on. Like, they don't carry that experience with them, that suffering. So I would think, like, my diet would very much have to change. Yeah. Like, I'm already ethically gray or, like, on the teetering edge ethically when it comes to eating meat, as much as I do love eating it. Like, I have my self-justifications in my head that work well enough for me, but honestly, it's not like the most well-grounded arguments there are. But yeah, once we roll into like, oh no, all animals are capable of this crazy amount of conscious thoughts and are capable of truly suffering, then yeah, my diet shrinks exponentially to the ones sending me empathic waves at the most. So, right.
And that's but like I said too, like, you know, the wants and needs of the animals may or may not change. It doesn't mean necessarily, let's say you go to this cows and they're like, you know,
what up?
By the
way, cows are one of those animals that probably do experience suffering.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, if they don't, you know what I mean? Just because you can communicate with them, I don't want you to think that that's what they may have in their head. They may, you know, I don't want them to be like, oh, please let me out of here. Like, I know that my brother went into that red building over there.
Literally saying that to me?
You know what I mean? I don't know.
And
that's
I feel
what I'm saying.
Like you're almost. I think if it's on that level, then next thing, I guess I'm dedicating my life to like saving animals, and ending any type of eating meat.
Yeah,
like
I know. That's.
Like, ethically, I'd be bound to. Yeah. And I'm not going to ignore that.
Yeah. I currently eat meat. I love eating steak, right? I love eating all kinds of meat. Yeah. However, I am one of those people where, you know, I have friends who go hunting, right? And they can hunt and they can go and they could shoot and kill an animal and they can skin it, they can eat it and they can cook it, whatever. I can't handle the hunting it. You know what I mean? I do feel so bad. However, I don't really have qualms about eating it. You know what I mean?
It's interesting. I'm the opposite. Like, I would have no problem hunting.
Yeah. See that? Yeah. See, I have other friends the same way, but I would have a real problem hunting it. Unless I felt it was on very.
Okay, this is about to turn into a completely different conversation because I can't, what is the difference between hunting it and the domestication and slaughter of an animal? Like, the hunting bugs you. Why?
No, well, and watching, like, even the domestication and
right.
That can bother me too if I watch it. I just don't want to see.
You don't want to watch the death.
I don't want to see
That's
that.
Interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
I think a lot of people do feel that way. I don't feel that way. I have the philosophy of, like, if you don't have the stomach to fucking watch it die, you have no right to fucking eat it. That's just how, and I don't mean that in a judgy way. I don't judge you for how you feel in any way, shape, or form. But that's definitely that's how I feel. Like, if I'm gonna have the audacity to eat something and feel like I'm in the right to do so, and I can't watch it die, then maybe I shouldn't be eating it.
Yeah,
but that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. See, I agree to a certain extent. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? That's why I wouldn't go hunting. Right. You know what I mean? Because I don't want. You know what I mean? But the animals I already get have already been killed. They weren't killed for me. They're killed just for anyone for mass consumption.
Sure.
So I'm going to eat it because I like it. I like the way it tastes. It's the honest to God truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. But like, I mean, there's philosophical. What's the word when something doesn't line up? Not a paradox, but
conflict.
Not a conflict. It'll come to me later.
But another story was that I had was like when I graduated high school, right? Me and my friends, we all got a cabin in Tahoe.
Fallacies. I think there's some logical fallacies in there, man.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean, but and it's not that I don't agree with people hunting. I totally agree with that. Like, part of my family is Native American and everything. I grew up knowing that, you know what I mean? And I do respect people who do hunt as long as they eat and use what they kill. Sure. You know what I mean? Not just let me put the trophy up on the wall and discard the rest.
Unless there is hunting, like, of predators in order to better cultivate, like, the prey in the area. Words are kind of failing me right now as we, like, eke over into the 2:30 a.m. Part of the night. That does happen where it's like you're culling the herd in order to promote growth. Yeah. So I support that as well, but go ahead.
But anyway, so like this, what happened was we went to go fishing, right? And in this pond, it was an artificial pond. So first of all, the fish are there anyways, you know what I mean? So it's easy for you to catch the fish, right? Sure. We catch the fish, and then you have to smack it in the head, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I remember
with a hammer, right?
No, actually, what they gave us were these like flimsy aluminum tubes that were very light. So when I picked one up, I was like, this is not going to do anything. You have to have weight to this if you want to bludgeon this animal to
shit,
death.
It didn't work. It's just like,
That's exactly what happened.
And it's still not dead.
And it was like looking at us, and we're like, smack, 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 right? I felt so bad. I felt so bad smacking this fish like 50 times in order to get it stunned enough or dead, right? You know? So I felt so bad that when I went back, I made sure that even after I cooked it and it tasted like shit, I made sure to eat every single ounce of meat off that fish, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Because I felt like I killed this animal. I'm going to, do that. And, I remember somebody didn't finish theirs and I was like, what are you doing? And they're like, it tastes so gross, I'm not going to eat it. I was like, you took that fish out and smacked it in the face with this light aluminum tube for 50 times. I was like, you better eat that shit.
Yeah, but I didn't tell it to taste like shit.
I know,
no,
right?
I'm kidding.
No, but that it's just, I do know that there is some juxtaposition there with me not wanting to have to see that, but I will definitely eat it.
So with, I'm kind of veering back to your original question here, and with so many of the questions you asked me, my answer, and you usually ask me like, would you use this regularly? And my answer is always like, no. This is the first time where I'm like, yes, all the time. Because I already...
Tell family and friends?
Oh, yeah. Everybody.
Absolutely. Okay, this is the first time I think you've ever said
yes,
that you would tell family and friends.
Because my family were really big into going out, experiencing nature, camping, hiking, all that other stuff. I mean, as a kid... my daily pastime was to jump my backyard fence, go up into the hills by myself or with my 2 dogs, and catch every single type of animal alive in our local area. Tarantulas, centipedes, lizards, snakes. I nursed a few birds. Birds, it's not really easy to catch birds, and I wasn't really looking to catch birds, but that was just what I did. I love animals. I love nature documentaries. I love nature in general. I love that shit. Yeah. Ranger's my favorite class in D&D.
Yeah, so, right on.
So I would very much be out there even more and getting to know nature. I mean, I think it would completely change my life because even if it wasn't like this weird, like all animals are sentient sufferers and I need to become vegan, I think even if that's not the case, like I would just be so inclined towards nature even more so than I already am that I'd probably go and pursue like some sort of zoologist or conservationist.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm
my whole life changed. I'm not sitting here in front of a microphone talking to you. I'm talking to a fucking elk in Yellowstone or something. So I think my whole life changes.
That would be the only thing that would suck is because like
I already want to move. I already want to move to a cabin in the woods on a mountain away from everybody. Now I definitely have already done that at some point. Sorry, what were we saying?
I was going to say, well, you might have still be sitting in front of a microphone talking, but it would be an animal podcast show. Yes. But the animals, like you couldn't have animal guests because they can't, the other people can't hear these, telepathic thoughts. But I just to kind of go back, it is hard. You're right. It is hard to say with this question, even though we're making it up, what these animals would be feeling, how much of a communication you'd be getting.
What if we found out that I don't like, what's a cute cuddly animal? Like what that isn't like a dog or a cat. Like what's an animal that everyone loves? Otters.
Otters, yeah.
What if we find out that otters across the board are assholes? Like complete sadistical pieces of shit that like just hate. They're just full of hate. Like, I mean, I don't know how I'd feel if that was the truth.
I know. They might be like, fuck you, get away.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why are you talking to me? You know what I mean? Like, well, some animals are very solitary. You know what I mean? Like they don't want to be around.
That's not what I mean.
Like, yeah, but I'm just saying like
what if all otters were psychopaths?
Yeah, I know,
so,
right?
Like,
I mean, I was going to bring up the fact too, like, because you're right. A lot of animals, if not all animals, are just very instinctual. You know what I mean? So it's like, maybe a lot of what you'd be getting would be animals just going like, oh, do you got food? I'm hungry. Like, do you have food? I'm hungry. That's basically what all they would be saying. Or it's like, or can I mate with you? Like, do you want to have babies? No. You know what I mean?
But based off intelligence, I would think like the most interesting animals to talk to would be, a lot of the larger mammals. You're dolphins and whales, elephants for sure. I actually think a lot of birds, especially like the parrots and stuff like that, the really, really highly intelligent ones, would probably be a blend of fascinating and incredibly annoying to talk to. Because I feel in my experience that birds are some of the most heartless animals on Earth. They are cruel they're like, and this is a D&D reference you're not going to understand. They're like, in D&D, there are these creatures called lizard folk, and like they don't really feel emotions. They're incredibly pragmatic to a point of being like
a real lizard.
I mean, just to the point of like being completely unempathetic to anything or anyone. I feel like a lot of birds are like that. I've seen birds do terrible things to each other. I forget the species of bird, but I know there's one who literally will sneak their own eggs into another bird's nest and what they do is they kill the other bird's eggs so that it'll only raise its own babies. They do. I've seen ducks do terrible things to each other and geese do terrible things to each other. Like, birds are vicious, man.
See, that's the one thing. That's the one side I was going to bring up with this question is that, I know a lot of people thought, that would be so cool. I could talk to my dog and my cat and my whatever.
Primates are vicious too, man.
Yeah,
have you seen like I think there might be baboons or some offshoot of the baboon family that have managed to, in Africa, that have managed to domesticate some small dogs, and they beat the shit out of those dogs. They super abuse those dogs. But the problem is, because of the way we've bred dogs over the last 30,000 years, like. Dogs are incredibly loyal to a fault.
Yeah, exactly.
So these dogs stick with these baboons even though they're being treated terribly. It's really sad.
Yeah. Let's go over to some Fritz facts here.
Okay.
So, number one, many researchers have been finding a lot more evidence that within the animal kingdom, many species can communicate with humans, but also with other species. Because many people focus on animals communicating with humans, like Coco the gorilla, I don't know if you ever heard of.
Yes, sign language.
Uses sign language. Or Alex the African gray parrot uses up to at least 100 English words to communicate. But other species can communicate with each other as well. And it gives scientists a better understanding on what the definition of communication really means for certain animals. Because it is true. It doesn't,
they have to interact with each other. So.
Yeah, exactly. You're right, because a lot of humans always... what was the word? Anthropomorphize. Yeah. And so, like, when you do that, you're putting, human emotions or human, like...
And it's hard not to do, I do it with inanimate objects half the time. So, like, exactly. It's very natural for us to do so. It's also very telling of how self-centered we are as a species.
I know. Number two, recently, a study was done in Norway, and the findings were published in the Journal of Applied Animal Behavior Science. And it proves that horses can be trained to communicate their body temperature to their handlers, and which shed new light on equine intelligence.
What do you mean? Like, how are they doing this? I don't understand.
What they did was they trained the horses to associate different signs on a board that would tell their handlers if they were feeling cold and wanted a blanket, or if they were feeling hot and needed either like an air to be turned on or water or something like that. Yeah.
That's funny too, because horses are considered some of the stupidest of our domesticated animals.
Yeah. That's why I think when they had stuff like that happening, now they're finally better,
we're better understanding.
They think it's stupid. They think it's not like, they lack intelligence.
Just because it doesn't react to the things that
exactly,
it should.
But it's not, you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
Number three, a fascinating study from 2012 adapted one of the ways in which we scientifically test the attention of infants to dogs and found quite a lot of similarities. Scientists tend to use eye tracking technology following the direction of babies' gazes to see what they like looking at, like attractive faces or whatever. But in 2012 study, researchers applied that technology to dogs and found that they can follow human communication about as well as 6-month-old babies, which can't speak but are gradually learning language.
Yeah, I mean, it's because we bred them to be like that. That's 30,000 years of forced evolution to work with in a symbiotic way, like no other two species on Earth have ever managed to do. Like, you're gonna get some crazy things between dogs and humans.
That's actually what one of the conclusions they came with is they think that was something bred, probably not knowing that, but you know what I mean. But they were bred, to do that.
Yep, exactly.
4. The concept of an electric fish such as the electric eel is a well-known one. Mm-hmm. But some breeds of fish have a far less powerful voltage designed for communication instead of stunning or killing prey. Mm-hmm. They're called weakly electric fish. Weakly as in Weakly.
Yeah, as in it is weak.
Yeah. Not that they only come out once a week.
Yeah,
and
once
it's
a
the
week.
weekly. It's the weekly electric fish. They produce mild electric organ discharges from their bodies, which create small electric fields. And the results give them advantages actually for hunting and communication because only certain animals can do that. And even if you couldn't do that, they said like with their electric field, they can detect things more quickly than like others, you know what I mean? That's just using maybe eyesight or smell or something like that. Number 5, I thought this was actually really interesting. One of the most famous studies of animal communication in history dates to 1917 when Austrian zoologist Karl von Frisch made the discovery that would found his career and win him a Nobel Prize in 1973. The fact that bees communicate through dancing.
No.
Yeah. Frisch had set up an observation hive with a source of honey nearby and found that when a bee discovered the honey, it returned to the hive and performed a dance while other bees touched its abdomen, right?
Interesting.
So I'm picturing like this bee like, boo, spoo, you know, and these like other bees are like, ooh, like touching his belly, right? So they were then able to find their way to the honey source without needing to be shown after the bee did this dance. So when he was like observing this, Frisch concluded that this dance was a way of showing other bees where the food was, and his later studies found that the direction and speed of the dance were precise diagrams or maps using the location of the sun.
Okay, so he was able to decipher this dance.
Yeah.
Like, that's fucking wild.
And that's wild that the bee could do this, like, based off of the location of the sun, like, at the time, like, you know what I mean? And for them to kind of know that and, like, find, you know?
I'm
like,
curious to see, like how he figured out, like, what meant what. That's
that is
I mean, I believe it. I do believe it. It's just, that's wild to me. For me, I'd be very curious I'd really be curious to know what whales are telling each other over these long distances. You know, when they sing at each other for like fucking hours at a time.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what are they saying? Like, what's being communicated? Because like, you know, you and me are talking here and we're using all this complex, like, body language, eye movement, many different words and inflections and all this other stuff to discuss these topics that we're discussing on this microphone. And it's so different from anything else we've seen in the animal kingdom. Yeah. You know, as far as we know. And to me, the next closest thing would be what dolphins and whales do.
And you got to imagine too. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, because when they communicate, those noises are heard over miles. They're not seeing this other whale. No, you know what I mean? Yeah. But like, with humans, when we communicate, a lot of the communication is body language too. It's not just the words that we're using, or it's facial expression. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we have to see each other. I mean, we don't have to, but it helps tremendously when we see each other. That's why when some people read text messages,
things can be taken wrong.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be like, okay, fine, and like someone would be like, okay, fine, yeah. But like I wrote it as like, okay, fine. You know what I mean? And like, you know, that's the problem.
Absolutely.
You know, I just wanted to bring this up with the honey dance or the bee dance. Actually, it went on to say that he was not the first to find that behavior. Aristotle recorded that.
Yeah, Aristotle was quite the little naturalist. He tried to form a way of classifying animals between land, air, and sea, rather than like, you know, mammal and reptile and other stuff that hadn't been invented yet. Yeah, but yeah, he was super into the natural world and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. I mean, he didn't know why. No. But he did observe it.
Yeah,
you know, I thought that was...
He was the first one that we know of to do that with animals. Most people didn't care about animals or feared animals. The natural world, for most of human history, was this great darkness to be feared and never to be ventured out into. Yeah. Like this idea that we have nowadays, this modern idea of like conservation, like would just have been such a foreign idea to the people of the ancient world. The fact that Aristotle was doing what he did was so beyond his time. Yeah. Even in a time of philosophers.
Exactly. Yeah. So do you have a favorite animal, Will? I always wanted to know.
It depends on the day you ask. Growing up as a kid, cheetah was 100%. I just loved everything about the cheetah, how fast it was, the way it looked. I loved everything about that. And I still love the cheetah. It's a cool animal.
I love the bear.
I like snow leopards. I think
snow leopard. Oh, yeah. I actually thought you were going to say snow leopard.
Yeah, snow leopards are a big one for me. I think they're majestic and gorgeous, and they ride that line between being badass but also adorable. Yeah, and that's I look for that in my Pokemon. I look for that in my animals.
I love bears. I love any bears. I love them because I just like they're big, they're strong, but they're not stupid. You know what I mean? Like they're not. They're fairly intelligent for their size.
Goddamn terrifying is what they are.
Yeah.
I like wolves. I don't think I'd be a proper Stark if I didn't like wolves. But I just like animals in general. I'm no longer the kid with favorites anymore. I just like all animals for the most part.
So recap, you would use this power all the time.
All the time.
You would tell your family and friends.
Yep, and they would love it because they would be asking me questions all the time.
I think also too, depending on the intelligent level of these animals and how much they're communicating with you, I think that would be a yes, and that you would probably try to get into helping the government or whoever change the ways that they deal with.
I mean, I think it would define my life on such a drastic scale.
Yeah.
And I would be a completely different person in a completely different line of work.
Dude, could you imagine?
I have.
I'm walking here.
And now, let's join Will and Tom with the traffic report.
Hello, everyone. It's Will and Tom with the traffic report.
Hey.
So we actually had good feedback. I'm kind of digging all this feedback we're getting after every episode. I wanted to mention one of the people on our Discord, Rob.
Oh, I know Rob.
Oh, you
hey,
know?
Rob.
Okay, cool. Rob actually...
Rob's one of our mods.
Oh, Rob is the mod, right? Oh, it does say Rob Chart Mod.
There it is.
He wrote in about episode 9, which was Clone Appetit. And he said, while I'm only just finishing episode 9, this made me think of this documentary on Hulu. I feel like Tom would love it. And to be honest with you, I am going to love it. I already watched the trailer. It looks very interesting. It's called 3 Identical Strangers. And basically, it was almost like the premise I set up for you in episode 9. Regarding regarding the you find out that you are not the only
You're
Will
not the
out
only
there.
one of you.
Yeah, exactly.
So I what is it? Is it clones, or want to give the premise?
Well, the premise of this trailer was it's basically 3 identical twins, triplets, and of course the trailer doesn't reveal all about the story yet. I haven't watched it yet, but the trailer goes off showing how this person goes off to college, and people, I can't remember the name, but let's just call it Eddie or something, right? Let's call it Rob, right? Okay. And they're all calling this person, hey, Rob, how's it going? Oh, Rob, what's up? And the person's like, why is everyone calling me Rob? That's not my name.
My name's Bob. What the
fuck?
Yeah,
I know. That would have been funny, right? And so he finds out later that he meets this other Rob, and it's his identical twin, right? Okay. So... that's kind of shocking. And then all of a sudden...
you do hear stories like that.
Yeah, exactly. But
isn't that what Sister's based off of?
Is it? Oh, yeah, I think they did. Yeah, they didn't know they were out there. So then, after he meets his twin, that story gets put in the newspaper, and someone reading the newspaper calls them or somehow contacts them and says, hey, I think I'm your triplet. So
how many more of us are there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
is that where it stops? It stops at triplet.
It stops at triplet, okay. And it doesn't exactly say why or what happened to them at birth, why they got separated, but it does say that there's some twist. Yeah, it does seem weird, and it does say that there's some twists and turns in the story there.
Interesting.
So if any of you are interested in watching that, you can just go to YouTube and you can probably look up 3 Identical Strangers trailer, and it looks very interesting. So thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
So we also have on our YouTube here, we have Darnell Hudson. And they wrote in, I want a super brain and telekinesis. And I think they're actually commenting on episode 10, A Murderous Mutation.
Ah, yes. Yeah. The 2 powers.
Exactly.
What were the 2 powers again? What did you just say?
Super brain and telekinesis.
Super brain, so super high IQ?
Oh, yeah.
How IQ are we talking here?
They didn't put, but if super sounds like pretty high.
I mean,
You know what I mean?
but I mean, we have people. What's that organization called?
Mensa? Yeah.
Like, what are all the Mensa members out there doing in real life?
Yeah, that's true.
Like, is having a super high IQ that much of a power?
You know what? If you think about it, how do we know what Mensa's really up to? They can actually be some super villain group.
How do we know what Mensa even actually stands for?
Yeah, I know. They could have just told us that it stands for whatever just because
and
we're
laughed at our small brains.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, look at those stupid idiots believing it. You know. But thanks, Darnell. That was a good comment.
Thank you, Darnell.
Both me and William, I think we agree, having a super brain and telekinesis would be awesome.
Yeah, it would be super cool.
I also wanted to mention this because I just thought it was funny. This is from, it's also on our YouTube, also for episode 10. Bryant Von Miller writes in, Will's never seen Die Hard?
Oh, man.
It's the best Christmas movie, man.
And that's the joke everyone tells, isn't it?
I know.
No, I've never seen it, but you know what? And here's, maybe, a lot of people seem to find this odd about me. I very much don't care for action movies. I just never have. So your Die Hards, your Fast and the Furiouses, all those movies just never appealed to me. I don't know why. I just never have.
Okay, and we are going to move on to our Apple podcast right here, our iTunes. We have 2 new reviews here, both 5 stars.
Thank you very much. Who are we thinking here?
So first is Varys Ellen.
Thank you, Varys.
And Varys writes, 100 out of 100. These guys made a fun, interesting, bite-sized podcast for you to let your thoughts wander to.
Oh, thank you.
I know. I thought that was really cool. We also have one from, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Osteric?
Thank you, Osteric.
Osteric writes, we've all done it, but these guys are bringing it to you. I love the idea of this podcast. Tom and Will are great hosts. I got here via the Dungeon Cast, where I thoroughly enjoy the content, and although this is different, it's just as good.
Oh, thank you.
They bring up some subjects that I've never really thought about, and the banter is often quite funny, so it makes for a great listen. Thanks, guys.
You're very welcome, and thank you.
Yes, thank you, Esther. That's awesome to hear.
And that is all we have for you tonight. We will continue to bring you up-to-date coverage as new imaginings develop. Please don't forget to leave an iTunes review, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Remember, you can follow us on YouTube and on Twitter at DCYimagine. And if you would like to contact us or tell us what you are imagining, you can email us at dudecouldyouimagine@gmail.com. This has been Fritz Frivolous, and from all of us here at Dude Could You Imagine, keep on imagining.
I'm going to leave that in there.
Oh, for sure. So name. This one's interesting.